Hello there, welcome to the Football Block. My name is Brandon, and today we have another episode of News Bits and another episode of the Weekend Roundup for you today. We have a super packed weekend. So far, this is the most packed weekend that I'm going to be covering here. Tons of games in Europe's top 5 leagues, tons of huge matchups, and a lot of stuff happened all across the continent here. So let's start off and let's get right into it. And we're actually not going to start off in the Premier League today. We're going to start off outside of Europe's top 5 leagues. We're going to look at the Eredivisie in the Netherlands. And we had a big matchup here between Ajax and PSV. Now, PSV, in my opinion, has actually been a very good team this year. I think they've had some really good signings over the transfer window. Same cannot be said about Ajax. Ever since Erik ten Hag left, they have not been the team that they usually are, consistently winning the Eredivisie and playing well in Europe. They've just gotten worse and worse, and this year they have been absolutely terrible. One of their worst starts to their season in the club's history, and this game against PSV was a blatant example of that. Where they were just straight up awful. They actually opened the score, though. They scored first, and then PSV equalized only for Ajax to gain the lead again at the end of the first half. Irving Lozano of Mexico was able to score the equalizer there. There is a lot of North American diaspora in this PSV team and in the Eredivisie in general. But the second half, even though Ajax was going into it with the lead, the second half is where they completely collapsed. They ended up losing 5-2. Chucky Lozano there grabbed the hat trick. Utterly abysmal performance from Ajax, and now they are bottom of the table in the Eredivisie. That is absolutely insane. There is a good chance that they could even get relegated. Now, you would hope that they're able to, pick themselves back up and then at least go somewhere with this season, but it is looking very, very bad. So anyway, moving on from the Netherlands to England and the Premier League, and on Friday we had a match between Crystal Palace and Tottenham. Crystal Palace was hosting Tottenham here, who are the league leaders, and then after winning this game 2-1, they retain their spot at the top of the table here. And like I said, it was a 2-1 finish. I think that Tottenham was overall the better team. Crystal Palace made it tough for them, but in the end of the day, it was very clear that Tottenham was the better team here. They scored with an own goal and then a goal from Hung Sung-min, who has, I think, been having a good season. People haven't been really giving him as much praise as they have in the past, because it's, with his high expectations now, considering he's been playing so well over the past few years. And Jordan Ayew was able to score at the end for Crystal Palace, but a little too late, and Tottenham wrapped it up with a 2-1 win. On to Saturday, we had a match in the morning that was looking like an easy win for Chelsea, but it turned out to be a bit of a banana skin as Chelsea lost 2-0 to Brentford. Now, I think that some people have characterized this match as Tottenham falling back to earth, or not Tottenham, Chelsea falling back to earth, because Chelsea has had some really good results in the past few weeks. It looks like Pochettino is finally starting to find a stride, and all these talented Chelsea players that have not been working together, it looked like they're finally clicking into an actual team or something that resembles a team. But here, I think it is partly true to say that now reality's hitting him in the face. But at the same time, I think that Chelsea played well throughout this match. They had so many chances. They just didn't finish their chances. Any other given day, they would have put one of these away, and then they would have ended up winning, because the goal that Brentford scored was completely against the run of play. And then the second goal they scored was at the very end. It was a corner, and then Robert Sanchez was up for Chelsea up in Brentford's box, and then Brentford was able to counterattack with a wide open net. So it's a 2-0 win. I think it looks a lot worse on paper, but the biggest cause for this loss here is Chelsea's finishing. Also on that same day, we had Arsenal dropping a ton of goals on Sheffield United, half a decade of goals, 5-0, hat-trick from Nketiah. Very good game from him, very good game for Arsenal overall. I think Arsenal, in my opinion, are probably the best team in England. Yes, Tottenham are top of the table, but you would expect them to eventually kind of fall off. Who knows, of course. Man City is also doing well, and as we move on to the next day, we have the Manchester Derby, one of the most important games in all of Europe. This weekend, Manchester United was hosting Manchester City, and this game ended up as a 3-0 drubbing from Manchester City. And a lot of talk has been on how good Manchester City played in this match. 2 goals from Haaland here, an assist as well as Phil Foden scored the third. But you can't say the City played bad, of course. I mean, I think they certainly played well, particularly in the beginning of the second half. But I think this loss here is more so to do with Manchester United just playing absolutely terrible. I think this was an abysmal performance from Manchester United. Very, very disappointing here. And if you look at throughout the match, the way it started, it was all Man City in the first half there. Man United had barely any chances. They had one breakaway from Højlund, but other than that, it was all Man City. And Man City looked like they weren't even, really moving into top gear. They were kind of just meandering on the ball, and yet they were still outplaying United. And then it got worse in the second half. Like I said, beginning of the second half, I think Man City was just pinging the ball around. They had some wonderful build-up play, and that led to the second goal. And then after the second goal, they kind of just took their foot off of the gas, and you would expect United to, at least have some fight in them and to fight back, but that is not what happened at all. They had 1 or 2 chances here, but nothing really serious. It was just a lot to do with individual effort, and that's what it looks like that this team is relying on. There's no system, there's no identity to this team. It's just individual players trying to do what's best to push their team over the line, and maybe that could work against a Sheffield, or maybe that could work against a Burnley, but that's not going to work against Manchester City. And it, as you can see here, ended up as a 3-0 loss, with that last goal from Foden being poked in after an assist from Haaland there. And you have to call in the question Erik ten Hag. This team looks terrible. They have regressed from last season. Yes, you can say last season it wasn't perfect. They had some highlights. They got far in some tournaments. They won the League Cup. They got to the FA Cup final. They had some, pretty bad moments as well, like that 7-0 loss to United. But still, you can see there was something that was Ten Hag was building. And it looks like this season they just completely regressed. Players have been playing worse. There's terrible performances all across the field. Now, in this game in particular, I think that, despite the criticism so far, I think Onana and Maguire actually had a pretty good game, particularly Onana, who's forced into making many saves. But overall, the team just, it just looked a class below Manchester City. So, as we look at the table here, like I said, Tottenham is still at the top of the table. Arsenal in second with 2 points behind. And then City and Liverpool are the following teams there to round out the top 4. And Liverpool also had a good win this Sunday with a 3-0 win over Nottingham Forest. A very good goal from Salah and Nunez, as well as Diogo Jota. Now, anyway, moving on to Spain, and on Friday we had Girona going up against Celta Vigo, and Girona, remember, is tied with Real Madrid on top of the table, top of the La Liga standings. And this match was a little tough for them. Celta Vigo came to play. Celta Vigo has been having a rough start to the season under their manager Rafa Benitez, and at times you can see them playing well. At times you can see them trying to execute the plans that Rafa Benitez has for them, but in this game, and just like in all their other games, it doesn't pay off. And it's very unfortunate to see, because you can kind of see what they're trying to do, but it just doesn't work in the end. I think Celta Vigo certainly didn't play bad. They, like I said, they made it very tough for Girona. They had a few chances themselves, but in the end of the day, I think Girona is a good team this year round. They are top of the table. I think virtue of avoiding a lot of the big teams. The only time they played a serious team was when they played Real Madrid, and they got blown out in that game. But still, you play who's in front of you, and I think, Girona came away with a really good result here. There was some controversy that it looked like Celta Vigo had scored a goal, but it was, I think, in my opinion, rightly called back for being a foul on the goalkeeper. Angel Herrera scored a very nice goal in the last minute of the game, actually, in injury time. Not technically the last minute of the game, but it was, the 91st minute there. There was a few more minutes left of injury time. Very good goal there to win it, and a very, very important win for Girona. Now on to Saturday, and we had the most important game, the most crucial game, the most highlighted blockbuster fixture of the entire weekend. We had El Clasico, Barcelona hosting Real Madrid here. Both teams going into this game in, good form, but not perfect form. I think it was pretty even. You can make a serious argument for either team being the favorite in this match. And I think that overall, it was, from a neutral point of view at least, a very fun game to watch. There was tons of chances. Both teams had some good performances here. There were some controversial moments, but it was Barcelona that started off on the front foot. Right in the 6th minute, Ilkay Gundogan, the new signing, had a very good goal popping up in another important game here for his team. And then it was all Barcelona in the first half. I think Gavi was running the show. He completely shut out Jude Bellingham. Cancelo was going up and down on the field. And remember, there was no Lewandowski, there's no Rafinha, no De Jong, no Pedri. Now, Rafinha and Lewandowski would eventually come off the bench, but they're coming back from an injury. They did not play in this match. No Jules Koundé either. Fermin Lopez was another standout performer for me. I think he played really well. And throughout the entire first half, it looked like Barcelona was going to run away with this victory. Now, they created some chances, but they didn't have many clear chances. I think in the final third, Barcelona, I wouldn't say were wasteful, but there was a little bit of inexperience you can see, and it makes sense as this team is very, very young, especially with those injuries that I just mentioned. And into the second half, it was more of the same. Now, there were some controversial moments here. First off, Barcelona was millimeters away from doubling the lead after a header from Inigo Martinez, which cannoned off the post, and then it was deflected towards goal again, but a good save from Kepa. This also mirrored a shot from the first half, which Fermin Lopez smacked against the post as well. So Barcelona, like I said, had their chances, but it's, you can tell that there is inexperience in this team. The most controversial part, though, was that in the second half, there was a set play where it looked like Araujo had been elbowed and thrown to the ground. I personally think it was a penalty. I did not see it on first glance, but the referee did not look at it. He did not even go to VAR, and this was not called a penalty. Very controversially so, because a few moments later, Real Madrid, out of nowhere, completely against the run of the play, got the ball. Bellingham picked it up in the middle of the field, and he was very far out. No player was really covering him because no one would even really try to attempt an audacious shot like that. But Bellingham, in the form that he is, ripped a shot, and it was an absolute rocket into the top corner. Wonderful goal from Jude Bellingham there. Like I said, completely out of nowhere, completely against the run of play. But when you have a guy as talented as Jude Bellingham in your team, that's what he can offer. And then immediately after that, I think Barcelona still was the better team, but Real Madrid had a second life. Almost. There was a lot of changes from Ancelotti as well. Camavinga came into the team. I think he re-energized a lot of the back line there. Vinicius overall, I think, had a very poor game, I have to admit. He did not really play well. He did not really do much, in my opinion, as did any of the other guys up top. But it was Bellingham who was carrying the team. And even as the match went on, Real Madrid had a few chances here and there, but it was still looking like it was eventually going to be a 1-1 draw, as Barcelona were looking a little fatigued. But out of nowhere at the end, with like a minute and 30 seconds left, Dani Carvajal whips in a cross, and then Luka Modric goes in to get a touch on it, or maybe attempt a shot. It kind of deflects off his knee, and then it takes a wicked deflection, bouncing over Inigo Martinez, who can't do anything about it. It falls right to the feet of Jude Bellingham, who taps it in to make it 2-1 to Real Madrid with basically seconds left on the clock. And that was it, as Barcelona fell to Real Madrid 2-1, despite playing so well for a majority of the game. As a Barcelona fan, it was very, very painful ending to a game that started great. But like I said, from a neutral point of view, this was a wonderful game. Very, very exciting to watch. Elsewhere in Spain, we also had a extremely exciting game as well. Cadiz hosting Sevilla in a match that ended up being 2-2. Cadiz was able to race to a 2-goal lead due to two very, very poor defensive mistakes from Sevilla. Now, Sevilla was able to bounce back. They were, from the minute they went down, they were trying to get goals back. And then Sergio Ramos almost immediately scored an equalizer there. He scored it was a very nice volley with a scissors kick volley, not scissors kick like a bicycle kick, but, a volley where he used his other foot as momentum to jump in the air midair and hit it with his opposite foot. Very good finish from him there, but it was ruled off very controversially so. There was some talk of a foul in the build-up, but then also Ocampos was standing in an offside position in front of the goalkeeper, so even though he didn't touch the ball, he was blocking the goalkeeper's view. I think it was a little harsh of a decision, and it was, it would have been cool to see Ramos' first goal back for Sevilla. He has not yet scored, at least for his own team. He has scored that own goal against Barcelona, but Sevilla was able to equalize after a header, or they were able to grab one back at least after a header from Ocampos, and then they did eventually grab the equalizer late in the second half. A wonderful volley from Ivan Rakitic, who rolled back the years with a shot that kind of, it looks like a slice at the first time you watch it, but in reality it was actually a very, very smart shot where he hit it with almost the outside of his foot, and then it chipped the goalkeeper into the top corner. Very, very nice goal there. And then Sevilla almost got the winner at the end there. And remember, this is a Sevilla team that is under their second match under their new manager, Diego Alonso. They had such a chaotic start to the season, a chaotic season last year as well, where they were in a relegation zone for part of the year, but then they ended up winning the Europa League. So this team is just in utter chaos right now, for better or for worse, and that's why they're one of my favorite teams to watch, because you never know what you're going to expect. They could pull off a wonderful performance against one of the best teams in the world like Real Madrid, or they can go 2 goals down to Cadiz in the next game like they just did here. So anyway, moving on to Sunday, we had Real Betis going up against Osasuna. Real Betis has not been having the best start to the season that they really should, considering how talented their squad is. And then Osasuna had a wonderful year last year, but is kind of starting to, feel the fatigue of severely punching above their weights. This was a close match, though. It was tied 1-1 until very late in the match. Isco rolled back the years and scored a wonderful volley, side-footed volley into the post and off the post and into the goal. Very nice goal from him. Athletic Bilbao tied 2-2 with Valencia. And there was another 2-2 draw with Rayo Vallecano tying Real Sociedad. So lots and lots of goals in Spain. It was tied in these two matches here, and then later on in the day we had Atletico Madrid going up against Deportivo Alaves. This match ended up being 2-1, but it really should have been more, as Atletico Madrid had tons of chances. There was also a goal that was called back that Griezmann scored. I personally think it was a little bit of a harsh decision there. Atletico Madrid had a very important victory there, as we will look at the table in just a minute. And then on Monday, Granada went up against Villarreal. This was a match that ended up being 3-2 in favor for Villarreal. Lots of goals, just like the other days in the league, and just like we'll see in the other leagues here. Brian Zaragoza, who continues his meteoric rise, got a goal there. Now, if you look at the table in La Liga here in Spain, we have Real Madrid top. They are tied on points with Girona, but in Spain, remember, it is done by head-to-head, so Real Madrid is top of the table as they beat Girona earlier in the season. Now, here's what's interesting, though, as because of that loss to Real Madrid, Barcelona actually drops down to 4th, and because of their win over Deportivo Alaves, Atletico Madrid moves up to 3rd. But they have a game in hand. They've only played 10, whereas all the other teams have played 11 games. If they were to win that game, they would be tied on points with Real Madrid and Girona, but they have the head-to-head advantage over Real Madrid after beating them several weeks ago. So technically, Real Madrid or Atletico Madrid could be top of the table, and we have a real title race on our hands here. you'd expect Girona to sort of fall away as the season goes by, but Real Madrid, Atletico, and Barcelona all have a realistic chance of winning the league this year. So anyway, let's move on to Italy and Serie A, and we also had a lot of very exciting games here this weekend. Juventus was able to beat Hellas Verona by just the skin of their teeth. I think they were overall the better team than Hellas Verona. Hellas Verona had essentially nothing going for it, but it seemed that everything that Juventus would do, every time they put the ball in the net, the referee would find some way to call it back, especially on Moise Kean, who scored a very nice goal in the first half, a wonderful finish after a really skillful turn. But the referee called it back for being offside. Now, if you look at the replay, and when you even look at the technology, he was offside by mere centimeters. Like a section of his foot was offside. And I've said this before, I think it was last week. If it's to the point where you need a machine to come out and measure the millimeters to judge whether you're offside, I think you're doing way too much. I think that at that point you give the benefit of the doubt to the attacker. Moise Kean could not run away from his bad luck, as in the second half he scored another goal, a really nice header, but then it was ruled off because he was judged to foul the defender who was marking him. Again, I think it was harsh, not as harsh as the first goal that was ruled off. But Juventus kept pushing, and eventually they were able to bundle the ball in the back of the line with literally the last minute of the game after Cambiasso came off the bench and scored a goal there. And they were briefly top of the table until Sunday when Inter Milan went up against Roma in a very high-profile match. Roma came out on top, very deservedly so. Inter Milan came out on top, very deservedly so. They were by far the better team here. I think that you can't really criticize Roma for playing bad. I don't think they played bad. I think this was just a case of Inter Milan proving why they are the best team in Italy here. It was a return to the San Siro for Lukaku. And Lukaku, safe to say, was not welcomed with warm arms. Completely understandably so. But in a game that people were talking about the return of Lukaku, it was actually essentially Lukaku's replacement at Inter Milan, Marcus Thuram, who was the hero who scored a goal after a nice assist from DeMarco. I think overall, Inter Milan was top to bottom the better team in terms of attack, in terms of defense, in terms of the goalkeeper. Their midfield, they completely controlled the game. I think that if it wasn't for the crossbar, as both Çalhanoğlu and Barella hit the crossbar there with beautiful shots, this game could have been 3 or 4-0 to Inter Milan. Also on the same day, we had Napoli going up against AC Milan in what was no doubt the most exciting and most fun fixture of this entire weekend here. Going into this match, it was a very important game for both teams. You had Napoli, who's kind of still experiencing that fatigue of their great season last year. They're trying to rise back up in the table, versus you have AC Milan, who is trying everything in their ability to catch up to their crosstown rivals, who are top of the table. And it was looking like AC Milan were going to run away with it because, as we've seen before, whatever it is with the way that AC Milan play, they have Napoli's number. They're able to figure out this team, even when Napoli was flying last year. The only team that they could not beat in both Serie A and the Champions League was AC Milan. And starting off in this half here, it was all Milan. Pulisic was running the show. He had a really good cross to Giroud with a beautiful header, slotted it into the back of the net. That being said, Napoli did have a chance to equalize. Politano missed a wide open sitter. Very disappointing from him. And Napoli had more of the ball. They went forward more. They were the more proactive team. But every time they would lose the ball, Milan would just pick up the ball and then go in the opposite direction and completely slice apart their defense, particularly in the air. I think defending in the air, you can really see the absence of Kim Min-jae, as Napoli were almost defenseless against Giroud's header, because Giroud doubled the lead after good build-up play from Yunus Musa. The ball comes floating in. Another header from Giroud into the back of the net, 2-0, and it looked like Milan, like I said, we're going to run away with it. That is until the second half, and I don't know what Rudy Garcia said to his players in the locker room, but it had to have been something great, something wonderful, because Napoli came out swinging. Politano made up for his terrible miss in the first half with a absolutely wonderful goal. In the second half here, he flicked the ball with almost a sombrero flick over the defender, and then he hit it with the chest and then whacked it into the upper level of the goal. And then from that moment on, it was a free-for-all. Milan had a few chances because Napoli was committing so many numbers forward. Napoli had a bunch of chances. Now, they were eventually able to equalize. They had a free kick at the top of the box. Raspadori whipped in a wonderful shot, curled it around the wall. You can't get more perfect than that. He stepped up good for when his team needed him because Osimhen was not able to play in this game because he was injured. There was also a red card there for Natan later on in the match for Napoli. And despite having the red card and despite being a man down, it was Napoli that almost scored the winner with literally the last kick of the game. It was a quick break. Kvara got the ball and then took a shot from a very tight angle. You can't really criticize him for not scoring here, although it was very, very close. Wonderful save from Mike Mignon, and then that finished 2-2. And it's really ironic because if you were to tell Napoli fans at halftime that you would be able to, claw back to a 2-2 result, they probably would have been happy. But considering how many chances they had in the second half and considering Kvara's chance to win it all, I'm sure they will come away with this slightly disappointed there. But still, from a neutral point of view, it was an absolutely wonderful game to watch, a Serie A classic. And, of course, I'm a little biased because I love Serie A. Even as a Barcelona fan, Serie A, I think, if I wasn't a Barcelona fan, would be my favorite league. I think this game is more than enough as a preview to those who do not watch Serie A, why you should tune in to the Italian league here. And then on Monday, we had two other important games to talk about here. Atalanta destroyed Empoli 3-0. Very good result there to rise up in the table to fourth. And then Lazio faced off against Fiorentina, a match that both teams needed to win. It wasn't a very eventful match. Both teams had some half chances there, but it ended up being a 1-0 win for Lazio. Immobile came off the bench and scored a penalty for his team there. The very reliable goal scorer there to put his team ahead and to grab all the 3 points. Now, if you look at the table, like I said, Inter Milan is top. Juventus is in second, and with that loss, with that loss to Juventus last week, and then with this draw against Napoli, AC Milan fall down to third, but the Napoli is in fifth, and Atalanta is in between them in fourth due to their very important win over Empoli. So, now let's move on to Germany, and we also had some interesting games here. Tons and tons of goals. In the first match we're going to talk about, we had Stuttgart, the team that has been in flying form, and it looks like this is the first obstacle that they will face here. It looks like they are starting to kind of come down to earth. They were defeated 3-2 by Hoffenheim, who is not actually having that bad of a season. They are currently sixth. Hoffenheim was able to race to a 2-goal lead. Now, Stuttgart was able to pull one back, but at the end of the day, I think Hoffenheim were overall just a better team here, and it showed in the result. It showed on the pitch. And, of course, you can't really criticize Stuttgart for falling apart at this level. They have been playing at such a high level. It was kind of just an expectation that they would eventually slow down at some point there, even if it is rather disappointing to see because they were a joy to watch over the past 2 months. Now, for their sake, hopefully they're able to bounce back and regain some of that wonderful form that they were in. As for Bayern Munich going up against Darmstadt, this match ended in a absolutely crushing victory, 8-0, including a hat-trick from Harry Kane, with one of those goals being scored from the 50. Now, you can kind of see why this match was so crazy because in the first half there was 3 red cards, 1 to Bayern, 2 to Darmstadt. So both teams had kind of lost their shape at that point. Both teams were kind of just, rattled, to say the least. And after the second half started, it was an utter goal fest. All 8 goals were scored in the second half, by the way. You had goals from Musiala, from Thomas Muller, from Sane, and then, of course, that hat trick from Kane. Great win for Bayern there. And then later on in the day, we also had another goal fest, a very one-sided goal fest, as Leipzig beat Cologne 6-0. Another smashing results from them. Openda, this new signing, played really well in particular. Now, let's move on to the next day, and like I said, there's even more goals to talk about here as Eintracht Frankfurt tied 3-3 with Borussia Dortmund. Now, Borussia Dortmund has picked up from their relatively disappointing start to the season this year. They've had some poor results early on, but they've been able to turn that around, specifically their win in the Champions League over Newcastle, which I think was very, very impressive in the midweek. However, this match here, maybe they were a little tired coming back from the Champions League, as defensively they were very poor, although we have come to expect that from Dortmund, to be honest. Actually, this match was very, very back and forth, but all 4 goals, because at one point the match was tied 2-2, all 4 of the goals had come from some form of a defensive mistake here. So it's not just Dortmund that had suspect defending, it was also Eintracht Frankfurt. But in the end, it ended up with Eintracht Frankfurt in the lead until the 82nd minute, where Julian Brandt was able to score an equalizer there to keep it at 3-3. And then later on in the Bundesliga on that Sunday, Bayer Leverkusen came away with a 2-1 win. Now, Bayer Leverkusen and Stuttgart were the two kind of surprise teams going forward, and while Stuttgart fell apart a little bit at this point, Bayer Leverkusen looks to be a very, very serious team, as they came up against a Freiburg team that was giving them a lot of trouble, that was defending well, that was very resolute at the back, and yet they were able to find a way through. Florian Wirtz continues his great start to the season, and Bayer Leverkusen was able to find their chances here, as they were able to kind of capitalize on momentary mistakes. They were able to force Freiburg into a few momentary mistakes and then pounce on those few chances there to score, and then they eventually came away with a 2-1 win, which puts them at top of the table still. They are still top of the table, along with Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. They are the only teams to have not lost a game in the Bundesliga so far. Bayern Munich with that 8-0 win, they move up to second, and as Stuttgart with that loss fall down to third. Meanwhile, Borussia Dortmund sits in fourth, with Leipzig sitting outside of the top fourth currently. Now let's move on to France. We also had some interesting games here, some very important games to talk about. Clermont versus Nice was the match that happened on Friday. Clermont is the second bottom team in Ligue 1, and ultimately, though, it was kind of a tough game, but Nice came away on top. And this match was important because of where it left them on the table, which we'll talk about in a moment, because of the results that happened on Sunday. Now, first off, we had Brest versus PSG, and this was a match that PSG raced to a 2-goal lead. Really nice goal from Zaire Emery. A very nice goal from Mbappe, kind of a repeat of the goal that he scored against Milan, where he completely tore apart Tomori. Very similar goal, almost a mirror image of that goal here. But it looked like PSG got a little too comfortable, as into the second half, really the end of the first half and then into the second half, they kind of just sat back. They expected that the win would come to them, but Brest was able to score one and then score another to equalize 2-2, and then they had some very dangerous chances as well. But in the end of the day, PSG got a penalty. You can say they were a little lucky to get that penalty, but still, they were putting themselves in positions to create chances to get their own luck. Mbappe actually missed a penalty, but was able to slide home the rebound, and PSG come away with 3 points, which shouldn't have been as shaky as it was, but still, 3 points is 3 points. And elsewhere, Lille defeated Monaco. Monaco was having a very good start to the season, surprisingly so. They were top of the table, but because of this loss to Lille right here, Nice shoots up to the first spot with PSG right behind them. Monaco moves down to third. Meanwhile, Lille, with that lead over Monaco, move up to fourth. Now, unfortunately, there was tragic scenes in France this weekend, as Marseille were going going up against Lyon. Two teams that have been having a very chaotic season so far. Marseille has been having some decent games, but just a lot of chaos behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Lyon has been nothing short of a disaster. They are currently the worst team in France statistically. They have yet to record a single win, despite us already being in the end of October. And they look to be in serious danger of being relegated. And Fabio Grosso, the manager here, he was hit with a bunch of rocks as the bus was coming in. It was absolutely crazy here. The Lyon bus was arriving to the stadium in Marseille, and they got pelted with a bunch of rocks from fans, broke the window of the bus, and hit Fabio Grosso on the eye. If you saw the pictures, it's very, very graphic. There's blood everywhere. It turns out looks like he's going to be okay. I don't think there's going to be any serious or permanent injuries or something like that. But it's something that you hate to see. Obviously, fans taking it too far. There's nothing wrong with having a rivalry. There's nothing wrong with being heated about it. But this is taking it a step way too far once you introduce violence. And obviously, all types of violence like this should be condemned. And very obviously so, the game was canceled and is going to be possibly played at a later date, or there's possibly, Marseille's going to be punished for that. It remains to be seen. But that has overall, I think, been my roundup for Europe's top 5 leagues. There was a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of crazy events here. Let me know what you think of all the games that happened this weekend so far. What do you think of Ajax being bottom of the league? What do you think of Tottenham being top of the league? What do you think of the Manchester derby, the gap between the two Manchester teams? What do you think of El Clasico? Do you think that I'm being a little too biased? Do you think that Real Madrid deserved the win? What do you think of Sevilla being the chaos that they are in? For better or for worse, they're fun to watch, but you never know what's going to happen. What do you think of Inter Milan being top of the table? What did you think of that amazing match between AC Milan and Napoli? What do you think of all the goals out of nowhere that just started raining down in the Bundesliga? And what do you think of the tragic scenes that we saw in France? And what are your thoughts on that whole incident between the fans of between Lyon and Marseille? Type all your comments in the section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. But anyway, guys, my name is Brandon, and this has been the Football Block. Hope you guys have a nice rest of your night.